disruptive.
America that I fought for.
Weird thing to happen. Hello, one and all. Welcome to this edition of Kitz Corner. Been a fantastic day so far. So, continuing on the conversation of Dr. Phil sitting down with Donald Trump, the interesting interview they had on Merit Street, which is Dr. Phil's streaming service. I didn't even know he had a streaming. Apparently he does, and it was a very compelling interview. We showed a bit of key moments of the conversation. If you want to watch on full, it's on many social media accounts. It's a long interview, but it's very in depth and exposes a lot of the situation unfolding with the establishment versus Trump and the convictions and so on and so forth. But I want to leave off with this, and someone tweeted this out by the name of Liberalcrat Media or Liberalcrat Media. Said, Justin, Dr. Phil McGraw has publicly called for an end to the political persecution against President Donald Trump. In a passionate statement, he urged the Biden administration to dismiss now the charges against Trump, emphasizing the need to save the soul and sanity of our country. Dr. Phil expresses his deep concern over the weaponization of justice system agencies and powerful government actions. Well, you want to see what he said here? Because this is after the interview. And he made, even during the interview, he made these statements about how President Biden and his team needs to drop these charges for the safety of the rest of the country. And how demonizing it is for not just Trump, but for everybody involved in this. So listen to this.
Of our great institutions, the FBI, Justice Department, and individual states' similar institutions, will lead to one of two outcomes. One is more of the same from the other side, tit for tat. That may seem deserved, but it is not the right way forward for America. The other is what I call on you to demand from your politicians today, an end to this craziness in order to save the soul and sanity of our country. The Pope has actually given us the right approach in his new book when he says, we are all brothers and sisters, and there must be no resentment among us. For any war to truly end, forgiveness is necessary. That is true of any war, including our current cultural war. We need our Justice Department to return to the business of meting out justice and not running the political agendas of those currently in power, blindly seeking convictions, warranted or otherwise, and attacking political opponents. That requires a very few important things from each of you, from all of us. Finding your voice, forgiveness, and focus on the way forward. Forgive them, for they know not what they do. Forgiveness, and at the same time requiring better. We are not some banana republic, for God's sakes. What are we going to do next? Have a Putin poisoning posse? And start finding political opponents foaming at the mouth at home, not so mysteriously dying in their lazy boy recliners? We're better than that. We must be.
Not that they haven't tried. Believe me, there's been many opportunities, and we have seen reports of how otherwise they have silenced out political opponents and adversaries and people that critique the establishment. I mean, remember when they had that CIA guy go over to Russia with that pen and try to poison Vladimir Putin, and then they realized that the guy was actually a spy from America? But yet they tried to frame it in a way that it was Vladimir Putin's, political rival, and they were trying to prosecute a political rival, which makes Putin this awful guy, even though they were doing the same thing for Trump. Like, again, we live in such a fascinating, insane clown world time where everything that we're doing to ourselves now, we're trying to accuse other countries of doing. Like, they're trying to point the finger of Russia committing war crimes against Ukraine, even though in order to have this war against Ukraine, we commit war crimes against Ukraine. We commit war crimes around the world for a quarter of a decade. And we have the nerve to point the finger at other people and say, you're in the wrong. So, it's just, we live in such insane, ridiculous, horrific, raised up times. And that's why I have a show. But anyway, let's get on to this.
Be better than that. I don't like what I see happening in our country. This kind of thing is exactly why I launched Merit Street Media and wrote We've Got Issues. I don't like seeing the weaponization of our justice system, agencies, and powerful government actions that, frankly, just make my skin crawl for all of us and for my grandchildren. And let's be honest, this is so not just about Trump. If you let your hatred for Donald Trump compromise your ability to find true north on your moral compass, shame on you.
And that's been kind of the whole point of what I've been saying, what the whole point of this channel is about. It's not to convict one side of the political spectrum versus the other. It's not the left versus right. The whole purpose of all this and why I bring this all to attention is the fact that it's us versus them. And it's the fact that they're criminally prosecuting those who step out of line of coordinates with the establishment. Anyone that steps in infuriates the way of the intelligence services or any corporation that's lockstep with the government or any lobby group, so on and so forth. Anyone that steps out of line to critique the establishment is met with the same prosecutions. So he's, defending Trump in these prosecutions. Like I said, if we go down the record trail of all the, from Joe Biden and Donald Trump, there's many things we could actually criminally prosecute them. Many charges that we could actually have a serious litigation battle on. But they're not doing that. They're cultivizing random crimes and making up these fabricated stories to silence out people during an election cycle for the purpose of not having a political opponent. They don't want Donald Trump in office again. They don't want to have a bit of a wild card running the show again because he was sometimes truthful. He pointed out the wars. He was pointing out the deep state. He was revealing a lot of things, and they can't have that anymore. So they have to cultivize these random trials and these random convictions, which weaponize the judicial process against people and has weaponized and deteriorated the rest of the country. And for someone like me, who is not a fan of Trump to begin with, to come forward and say, regardless of how I feel, I think this is unjust for the sake of justice, is what people need to do. We need to come together to, take our personal vindictions away from the fact that, we have personal vendettas against Donald Trump and focus on the fact that this is a wrongful prosecution for the act of being a political rival. And that is just wrong.
If you let your disgust for Biden make you blind to the inevitable consequences of pursuing revenge, then God help the children who will inherit the dystopian nightmare we create. We need leaders who will pledge to end this vicious cycle right now and return us to that safe place where our institutions are no longer bastardized and weaponized, but rather simply serve their intended purpose. We have serious problems to solve.
I just want to go on record that I think these institutions are there for the sole purpose of undermining the American public. I get the sentiment that Dr. Phil's trying to bring here, that we need to get back to, when things were kind of cool and chill. But you look at the CIA, the history involvement within the public sphere, their whole notion, same with the FBI, same with the NSA, their whole notion, their gain to power, and this is why people have been calling them out for years, and they should definitely, is the fact that they undermine the just of the American public. That their sole intention is to villainize people underneath them to enact secure control of the establishment. And that's when you have people like Chuck Schumer go on MSNBC and telling the president, hey, you better watch your mouth before they come after you, because they have 6 ways Sunday to take you down. That's the whole intention of the intelligence agencies. They're not there to serve our interests. They're not there to serve the national security of us. In fact, they jeopardize our security every single day. Why? To not care about us, but to care about the establishment.
And it will take serious people to solve them. Men and women who we hold accountable for doing that which they were selected or hired to do. They need to know we are watching, and their positions are privileges, not legacies. They work for us until they don't. I'm not into politics. I claim no expertise, nor do I seek any. I don't advocate voting for one candidate over another. I stay in my lane addressing human behavior collectively, culturally, and am focused on how we can have maximum control in our lives and turn this ship of state called America in the right direction and get her back on track so we can be proud. That's my mission, and this is a call to action to save our collective soul and sanity. This is also a call to redemption, healing, and forgiveness that leads to peace among us all, which is the most important gift we can share in our dangerous world. The current administration could and should do the right thing. Dismiss now, even now, post-conviction of a political opponent, all such lawfare, and pledge to return to the normal functioning of a government rightly run. God bless you all, and God bless these United States of America.
That's powerful words. And I kind of like this Dr. Phil now. Because I've seen, couple of clips here and there of when he was doing his daytime. Like, I try to avoid daytime TV in general. The fact of how awful it is. Even now, it's just disregardingly distasteful. Let's just say that. There's a reason why I'd rather just not deal with any of it. But, back in the heyday when Dr. Phil was kind of this primetime devant of the talk show sphere, and every time he had on, those sometimes celebrities, sometimes influencers, or they get random people with the eating disorders or whatever, and yeah, it's kind of interesting for the story aspect and look into it, but then you realize it's like you kind of realize that's all like made up. Like they kind of just did it for the fact of, ratings and stuff like this. Whereas now that he's on, I guess, his own streaming service now, that he's able to just say what he wants, he's actually more poised. He's actually more elegant. He's actually bringing forward, real subjects and real things that matter to so many people. And I think that's incredible for someone like him. Because he could just do the exact same stuff he did for, all the years on daytime and just move that onto a streaming service. But now he's actually like, no, I'm going to take my expertise of psychology or whatever he's into and, bring up the ultimate question. Why are we prosecuting a political opponent during an election year for the sake of silencing a political opponent? And do we want to live in that America? Do we truly believe in the land of the free and home of the brave if we continue down this path? So kudos on him. Kudos on him. I give the tip of the hat to Dr. Phil for bringing this up and for even just having this conversation with Donald Trump, because I know probably now in the media world, they kind of have to refrain themselves from having a conversation with Donald Trump, because why would you talk to a convicted felon? Why would you talk to someone who's been accused of raping a porn star and lying about the hush money? Why would you do something like that? They kind of get discouraged by their advertisers and producers and showrunners. But I guess being on a streaming service, he's able to just go with it. So I like this. I like the message that he had there, and it really is impactful. We need to come together. We need to, focus on our similarities, focus on common key goals and issues that we can move forward as a society, as a country, instead of completely demonizing ourselves by our differences and continue to, uh, separate us, with these notions, because that's how the establishment wants us to be. They want us to be segregated. They want us to be yelling at each other, left versus right. They've always wanted this, as a way to distract us so they can take more control over us. But it really comes down to us versus them. And again, regardless of how you feel about Trump, and I get that he's not, the pretty package. I get that he's a narcissist and, he's a bit full of himself. He's a television star, for God's sakes. That's one of the things that makes you a television star, is you become full of yourself. And, I'm no fan of the Trumpster myself, but when it comes down to justice, when it comes down to law, when it comes down to the country, when it comes down to, just how this all plays together, it's more dangerous than people realize. And I think people are so blindsided. They have their, Trump derangement goggles on, that they don't realize the path and direction that they're going to, how it's actually going to affect them or themselves than Trump. Because Trump is actually succeeding more after this prosecution, after the litigation, after the trial, and they found him guilty. He's soaring in numbers after all this. But it's hurting the rest of the country. And I don't think people have fully realized that until they go down that deep, dark path. And we got to avoid going down that deep, dark path, because while they're doing all this, they're advancing to World War III. They're advancing nuclear warfare, doing more censorship tactics, demonizing more of the population of America. And it's not good. It's not good for the safety and sanity for the country, for everybody and future generations. It's not good.